Hey, it's Nancy A. Schenker, the geezerproofer, and today's episode is called The Handcuffs in Your Head. And it's not really about BDSM, although we could touch on that if you're interested in it for a future podcast. But really what it's about is the things that we have in our brains and in our hearts that hold us back from moving forward. And it's those self-limiting beliefs. And that becomes especially important as we reach 50 and beyond. I mean, there are young people who are risk averse, but my experience has been that as people get older, they tend, I don't want to generalize, but many of us tend to come up with reasons why we can't do certain things. And whether you're 20 or whether you're 80, the reality is that little voice in your head that says you can't do this, or you're too old to do this, or you can't do this because, end up sometimes getting in the way of our having new experiences, building new relationships, trying new things that we may or may not like, but it is the key to growth, is experimenting, taking those risks, and doing things that may otherwise be out of our comfort zone. So it's what I sometimes call cerebral constipation. So like real constipation, you need to go, but you just can't for whatever reason. And sadly, there is no mental laxative where you could just like pop a pill and automatically become open to new ideas or new actions. So what I'm going to do today is give you some of the tips that have worked for me over the years in getting out of my own way. So first, an interesting statistic that applies to the corporate world. 85% of executives believe that fear is holding back innovation. And I think that's very much true for we everyday people in our own lives. The same way fear prevents a company from doing something out of the box, trying something different, launching that new product, hiring that person who doesn't quite fit in, we allow our fear to hold us back in moving on with our lives and living better, more active, more interesting lives. And we're not always talking about major change here. I'm not saying that you have to suddenly jump out of a plane or bungee jump or sell all your stuff and move to Portugal. I'm talking about like the everyday steps that you could take to broaden your life, if that is in fact what you want to do. So I learned a great term as I was preparing for this podcast. It's Jurassicophobia, which sounds a little bit like Jurassic Park, but it's not that. It is a fear of aging. And interestingly, more than 50% of people are not afraid to get older. Getting older has a lot of benefits that come along with it. If you have saved money for the future, maybe you're not as worried as you were when you were younger. I found from my own experience that I am less concerned with what other people think of me. We've all heard of our fearless 40s, and then I've heard the expression, the fuck you 50s, which from personal experience, I could say that as I've gotten older, I care less and less about the judgments of other people. And I'm not afraid of aging because, as I've said many times on this podcast, I really do believe that I have at least another 40 years plus left in my own life. I live a non-traditional lifestyle. I have a small minimalist apartment. I travel a lot. When I travel, I buy one-way tickets because I'm never really sure when I'm going to come back. I was going to say, or if I'm going to come back, but I usually do wind up at my home base to do my laundry, catch up with my friends. But I know people who are way more out there than I am, who actually have sold all their possessions, who live out of a camper, who live out of Airbnbs, who travel the world. And you could be any age to do that. It all has to do with your mindset. So here are 7 ways that you can unlock those handcuffs in your head that are holding you back from experimenting and doing new things. Number 1, look in your rearview mirror and think about all those things that you've done in your life that you had never done before. Most of us have learned how to ride a 2-wheeler. They went to school for the first time and were left off by their mother or father after never having been alone in a classroom with a bunch of strangers. Parenthood is very much an example of that, where all of a sudden they send you home from a hospital with this little person and you're expected to take care of them. So we are capable of doing some big, bold things in our lives. We just have to remember that that power is always in us. Number 2 is take baby steps. If you are an introvert and you really shudder at meeting new people, ease into going to meetup groups or accepting that invitation to the party where you don't know anybody. If you are looking to lose 50 pounds, just start by making simple changes in your life. Again, it's the baby steps that will ultimately lead you to the big, bold moves. This one I can't recommend enough, which is having an accountability buddy. Having one really close friend or family member where you just say to them, this year I will fill in the blanks. And then make sure that they're checking in with you on a regular basis to make sure that you're making those moves. If you want to invest in having a professional do it, a therapist, a life coach, a business coach, all of those people could be great accountability buddies, or sometimes just a really good friend who says, yes, I will keep you on track on this if you could keep me on track on that. Keep a journal. I know it sounds kind of trite and woo-woo, but I have a journal that I write in every night. I force myself to write one great thing that happened that day, something I'm going to do differently the next day. I set goals for myself by the month. I have a really cool journal from Target that I think was only like $13, and it has spaces where you could set your goals and track your accomplishments against them. Number 5, surround yourself with people who will cheer you on. And I can't stress this one enough. I had a tendency to allow people in my life who were yes-butters, as I call them, people who came up with a lot of negative reasons why they couldn't do things, why I couldn't do things. And I just found that having that toxic energy around me was holding me back. So I've become kind of ruthless, not in a mean way, but just not allowing people into my life who aren't, they could be pragmatic, they can be devil's advocates, they could call me out on my bullshit, but I don't want to be surrounded by what I call toxic energy. I always think of Pigpen and Charlie Brown surrounded by that ball of dust. And there are people like that probably in your lives who you just need to jettison off if you really want to make bold change. Eliminate some words from your vocabulary. Words like I want to, but, or I can't. And then instead replace them with things like I am trying to blank, or I'm going to try my hand at blank. So thinking positively rather than coming up with that long list of reasons why you can't do something, can't try something, is just adopting that positive mindset. And then last but not least, and I just used these words in another podcast that I did about my goals for 2024 and my regrets for 2023, is don't self-flagellate. And that's kind of keeping with this little bondage theme. Don't beat yourself up when you don't achieve a goal, or if you try something and you don't like it and you decide you're not going to do it again. That is not a fail. That is just an experience or an experiment. And the more you look at your life as a series of experiments and experiences and rid yourself of those handcuffs in your head, the richer, more fun, more interesting life you will live. So those are my 7 tips for being a beezer, somebody be in the moment, be active, be connected, and prevent yourself from lapsing into geezerdom, which is assuming that your life as you know it is over and that you can never do anything new or exciting or creative. So on that note, I urge you all to be a beezer and not a geezer. Continue to listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple, whatever medium you like. And if you're interested in being a guest later in this year, please just reach out to me at thegeezerproofer@gmail.com. We're booked solid for the first quarter of 2024, but I'm looking for guests for the rest of the year. And again, geezer-proof your life, and hopefully you got some great tips from this podcast and the other episodes. And have a great year. Peace out.